and good morning, members of the working group. I'm here on behalf of Southern Echo and the Mississippi Delta Catalyst Roundtable. Thus far, we have submitted to the Commission 3 documents, the first of which was a study that we did in conjunction with Dr. Jerry Johnson, which concerned the data or criteria to be used as research-based, data-driven evidence for the Commission to consider. The second document we submitted was another study by Dr. Johnson and Shane Shope, both at Ohio University, concerning the issue of the achievement gaps in student performance, comparing smaller districts and larger districts. And the third item is the report we're submitting today, since John Augenblick finished his submission of data to the Commission, and this report focuses on the inferences that we think the Commission ought to consider, ought to draw from the evidence presented, and especially in light of the evidence not presented to the Commission. Now, 5 minutes is a hopelessly insufficient time to discuss these 3 reports or anything else. So let me see if I can cut to the core of some things we would like you to consider. First, when you look at our studies, you'll see that poverty, low wealth, eligibility for free or reduced lunch among the student body is a much more relevant driving factor in terms of impact on the performance of school districts than the size of the school districts. When you look at that first study, you will find that when you account for poverty, which John Augenblick does not do in his study, the size of the school district becomes essentially irrelevant. When you look at the second study on achievement gaps, and you look at the linkage between student performance and 3 criteria. One is race, looking at black students and white students. Socioeconomic factors, looking at students who are eligible for free or reduced lunch and those who are not. And when you look at students who have disabilities and those who do not, we find that the data is clear across the grade levels, as in both studies, across all of the grade levels, that the larger school districts do not do any better in terms of impact on student performance than do the smaller school districts. In fact, in most of the grade levels, we find that the smaller school districts do more to reduce the negative impact of poverty on student performance than do the larger school districts. So again, this raises serious questions about one of the primary criterion that Augenblick used in his study, which was to suggest that there was a correlation between small size and underperformance, or larger size school districts and higher performance. Augenblick conceded from the outset that his correlations were not related to causation. They were simply correlations. Now, other people are going to present some other parts of this. 5 minutes is a very short time. How much time do I have left? 1 minute. Let me emphasize that we are most concerned that at no stage in this process are the primary consumers of the public education system at the table. Notwithstanding that we have organizations that have spent 5, 10, 15, 20 years working to improve public education here in Mississippi, with a significant track records of impact on public policy in a progressive way. No members of the Commission represent any of these parent and student organizations. So we're not at the table. We get a chance to come and talk at you at no time other than catch as catch can outside this process do we get a chance to talk with you. We're not part of the deliberative process, we're not part of the discussion, and we're certainly not part of the decision-making process. This continues to be a void in the education policy process with task forces and commissions that needs to be remedied, okay? And am I now out of time? You see how insufficient the time is when you have 5 minutes to talk about something this complex? Pardon me? Yeah, I think that it's unfortunate. Let me just stay on this point. I think it's unfortunate that when we talk on the side, before or after, everybody concedes how important it is to have meaningful parental engagement in the process, meaningful student engagement in the process. But we don't have that when we assume, when we start out with the premise that parents and students cannot be appropriately validated in this process by having representation. The educators on this commission, the public officials on this commission, the business people on this commission do not represent everybody in their class of or status. They represent some people, they represent a diversity of viewpoints. This should be represented with parents and students as well. And we've tried to demonstrate that by submitting to you very competent, clear, and what we hope will be helpful data and analysis so that you can have a research-based, data-driven analysis upon which you can rely. The last comment I want to make is the materials presented by Augenblick at best created only a partial model and not an appropriate set of criteria, and they should not be the basis upon any rush to judgment. Thank you.
Thank you.